This one's for the culture. Me and wifey in the room thinking of a master plan, thinking how we can influence the culture from where we stand. Knowing that our steps are ordered by the master's hand, still 10 toes down, we ain't switching up the stance. The mission of this music ain't just to make them dance, trying to tell them about the rock, cause they build.
And welcome to the latest and final edition of this series of Society's No-Nos. I am Mr. Bond Chronicles with my host,
Mrs. Bond Chronicles.
and we are the Bond Chronicles. Exciting day. I believe this is episode 39, 40. We don't know, but we'll update that. But an exciting time. Thank you so much for taking the time. If you are taking time away from the Black Friday deals that are going on, I just zinged in and zinged out on those bad boys. I was just telling my lovely co-host here, this is one of the more stress-free Black Fridays I've ever had because I'm basically done. Just got to wait for stuff to get delivered. And I was thinking today was Wednesday. I was like, oh, this is going to get here fast. But today's Monday.
Definitely Monday.
Yeah.
It was a very Monday for me too.
Yeah.
Like it was a lot.
It was. Busy day. Lots of great announcements at my job, so to speak. But yeah, it is a Monday. I also was reminded of just how great life is. And hello.
It's mom.
Mom.
Hey.
What?
So,
which one is it? Is it mom?
So I'm assuming that it's mom. My mom on Tiana's account.
She don't have Facebook?
She does. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, you know the Wi-Fi is bad, so
it is.
That
it's
could
awful.
be something.
Can't wait till she moves.
Exciting times with that. But no, it's a crazy day. Thank you so much for joining us. I know football's coming up for some of our fans. We're looking at the analytics, and shout out to the men because they've been showing us some support and love.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because bringing them in, bringing them out. Shout out to you guys. But yeah, it's both of them. Yay! Look at that.
Hey,
it's
y'all.
2 for the price of 1. But no, exciting. It's funny that we have family on with this episode because we're going to be talking about family and no-nos. And so nothing here is personal. It's always just fun and entertainment.
Love.
And it may be based on a true story, but you never know if what we're talking about is actually about you guys. So fun times. This is for your neighbor's family, not our family. So we will not waste any time. We will get right into it. And family's family. This time of year, as we get into definitely the giving season, as we get into Thanksgiving, we had Friendsgiving this past weekend. We did a terrible job of taking pictures and documenting it, but it did happen.
It was great.
I can promise you it happened because I did the dishes and they sucked. But now we got to get ready to do them again because we got to cook again for regular Thanksgiving. But no, it's a time to come together, and it sucks. Everybody always says you shouldn't need a reason to come together and be a family, but people do.
Yeah.
And it's whether you call it an excuse to get together and eat and hang out, but it's better than getting together when it's a funeral.
Most definitely.
So we definitely look forward to that time of fellowship and family. But too oftentimes, families are not the closest outside of holidays or life-changing events. And so really what we want to talk about today is kind of why we think that is, kind of what drives that, what may drive people apart versus what could potentially drive them together. As you guys have seen in the series, a lot of times the norms is what we're talking about. And we don't always agree on what the norm should be. That's been very clear. But I do think it's time for us to talk about some of these things that we just take for granted or that we just go about. So, did you have anything else you wanted to say? I know I've kind of introed this for a little bit.
No, we can jump right into it. Like you said, family, especially when you're talking about the do's and don'ts and the no-nos and all of that, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, especially because everybody has such different family dynamics. Like even the differences between your family and my family.
Mm-hmm.
it can be interesting is the word I'm going to use to describe it. To see people's viewpoints on how you deal with family and the many things that you love about your family and the things that you don't love so much about your family.
Yeah.
And it's just funny because like everybody watching today is
It's
all family.
Yeah. So should be a good show, and definitely feel free to share your comments as well. So the notes that we wanted to talk about and really get into is not the most fun topic, but it is what it is. And I'll speak more so from my perspective, but a lot of times I believe what happens, and this happens in relationships too, is that when you care about someone, you give grace for sometimes wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And I feel like too often in times family, because it's family and blood is thicker than water. And even I was watching the season finale of BMF last night, and it was cradle to the tomb or something like that. I forget. Wound to the tomb. Like
that's their saying.
So we're gonna ride forever because we're family. And I think what has got lost in that is the world we live in is dangerous. Like it's a hectic place. It can be a bad place. It can be a divisive place. But the problem is all those people that make the world divisive are somebody's family members. And sometimes you are in that way with family. We saw with the last we've seen it with political cycles. We've seen it with this COVID vaccine. We've seen it with a lot of different things that family is made of humans. And when you have humans, you have personalities, you got egos, you got history, you have a lot of things. And a lot of times we'll sweep stuff under the rug. And I think our generation does a better job of addressing it. But I can speak to maybe the generation before me where a lot of stuff was never dealt with.
Yeah.
And it made for very tense situations, very uneasy situations. And there was beef, but nobody wanted to talk about why there was beef. About it.
Yeah.
And so my thing is, I think we have to get past that. You have to get to a point similar to where you ignore a phone call, is it's not personal. But if you do something that's messed up, I should be able to tell you what you did is messed up. And we would like to believe that you would own the fact that as your family, as your cousin, as your aunt, as your uncle, whatever it is, you would own, yeah, I did, it was messed up. And when I knew that, and now we can move forward.
Yeah.
But too oftentimes people fight and then people pick sides. And I can tell you, I can attest to this personally on a number of occasions. Families pick sides. They pick the aunt that they like. They pick the cousin that they like. They pick their mom or their brother or their sister, even when those people are wrong. And now the family splits. And now the people that are calling a spade take one side, but the other side that are defending the wrong person, they take a side. And next thing you know, years go by and people haven't spoken.
Yeah, like you said, I think it happens a lot more. It happens a lot more with older generations. One, it's kind of like you weren't really allowed to call out your elders on things that you feel that they did wrong. I know in several families, not just mine, the people like my mom's age group have an issue with the way like maybe their parents did things or the way that their grandparents did things. And they're getting to a point where these people are passing away, but they're still harboring all this animosity, all these different things from their childhood that they've never addressed or they've attempted to address, and it just didn't go anywhere. Which obviously, like you said, makes for an awful family dynamic, because if you've got all these people who are supposed to love each other, rock for each other, and all of that, like walking around with all this anger towards each other, how can you really say that you're a close-knit family? How can you really say, I love you, you're my blood, and this, that, and the third? But deep down in in your heart, you're just like, I'm still really pissed off because of some of the things that happened in my childhood, or even not in childhood, like still pissed off about the things that you've done to me in my adulthood. And like you said, until people get to a point where, and you can't say that it's not personal, because
no, it's definitely personal.
It's definitely personal. But the same way that you would want to address your spouse or anybody that you care about, you want to be able to address them with open honesty and truth from love, even if it's not a loving sentiment that you're sharing with them. Because again, walking around with all that angst and all of that, it's not good. And unfortunately, too many times now, families are really only getting together for funerals. Um, we just did 2 years basically almost where people couldn't get together with their families. And although a lot of people made ways to still interact and connect with each other, the reality is lots of people lost family members in this last year and a half. A lot of people missed births, they missed marriages, like these huge occasions. And it's just made that gap between people even bigger.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Is that a lot of times when people come around, or sadly, it's either a wedding, maybe a birth, but usually a wedding or a death that brings people together. And I think in this COVID era, it's been a lot more death than wedding because people have been putting off weddings or doing smaller weddings because of distancing and things.
Yeah.
And I think it really shows a lot of times the divide within the family. And I guess the part that's frustrating is people know and recognize that there is a divide,
Oh, for sure.
but nobody fixes the problems that are causing the divide. And I know you've told me stories, and I have a number of stories, and then I got friends in those that have stories of things that go back sometimes before even we were born. But the kids are now playing out some of these same things, or things that happened in my childhood with my aunts and uncles, and things that were said or done that never really got remedied, never really got addressed. And so there's always that uneasiness, that harboring, whether it could be jealousy. I think we both have people on each side of our family that some came from not the best environments, and some made it, some didn't.
Yeah.
And so
there's a different level of tension.
Definitely a different level of tension. Or when certain people come around, it's big time's here, or the money's here,
Hollywood.
or Hollywood, and it's this sarcasm that's really built in hate because maybe you left, and everybody has a different dynamic. So I don't want to just focus on us, but I feel like family is crucial to having longevity. And I'm going to speak specifically to like the Black community. Like that's part of the reason that we don't have the wealth that we have, is because when too often when someone dies, it's like throwing meat to the wolves, and everybody's fighting for scraps, and everybody's trying to assert their authority and take their place of what they have, what they deserve. And instead of collectively coming together and all pitching in to keep grandma's house, everybody sells grandma's house, and so that they can take their pennies on the dollar for what they would really get.
And that irks me, like, especially because I've seen it happen in my family. Like, when my auntie Betty passed away, we went up to Indiana to see family and obviously attend her funeral. And Gary has never been like the greatest place to be. But when I was a kid and we were there, like it wasn't that bad. But to go back, like there was a particular street that like my great grandmother had a house on, my aunt, like family, like owned the street almost, or really close friends of the family owned the street. And me and my mom rode past there. It was late, so we didn't get out of the car, but we rode past there, and I swear it looked like something out of like a horror movie.
Yeah, you're telling me.
Like it was awful. And then it was really sad to see the house that my auntie Annie, had taken care of. Like again, these weren't the most affluent people. Like they didn't have all the money in the world, but my auntie Annie's house, like that was the house to be at. Like food was always there. People was always there. It was overflowing with love. It was just a place. Like it's a feeling almost, not just a house. And to see it the way that it was, it's just like, dang, nobody could figure out how to keep it up, how to at least keep it. Maybe no one's living there, but to at least keep it so that it looks nice. And it was just awful. But like you said, unfortunately in Black families, when people die, the first thing they start doing is fighting over who gets what and what belongs to who. And that within itself it does tear families apart. You know, not speaking completely all over my situations, in my family, just people will make assumptions over things that they don't know anything about. And again, you said stuff that was going on before we were even alive. They're still harboring all of that as adults, and they're trying to sort through that, but they're also trying to sort through all their own current bull crap that people are going through in life. And if you can't, like I said, if you can't get to a point where people can have open and honest conversations about the things that they feel were done wrong to them and come to some sort of amends, there's never going to be really any true unity in the family.
Yeah, and I think that, and appreciate everybody commenting. We got a lot of family in here as well, so thank you again. What?
Oh, nothing. Go ahead.
But I think the other part to that is the failure a lot of times in Black communities in estate planning. Mm-hmm. And I was just watching Insecure, and real quick story about Molly has been talking to her parents throughout the season on getting their estate planning in order.
Yeah.
And then on this most recent episode, spoiler alert, sorry if you haven't seen it, her mother ends up in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And so now she was having a conversation with her dad, and they talked about, and it was like, yeah, we were getting ready to finalize it. And so now her mom's unconscious, and they're talking about paralysis and all this other stuff. And she's like, I've been telling you guys, we need to have this conversation. I've had the conversation. You guys said you were going to get it done, and now you haven't. And we've seen, sadly, a ton of entertainers that have passed every single year.
And those are the people who you think like they would have all that kind of stuff together. But Aretha Franklin's estate wasn't. There's so many people who they pass away, obviously unexpectedly, or even in some knowing way that they were going to pass, and nothing is in order.
Yeah. And so I know it's a tough conversation to have. No one ever really wants to talk about mortality. And you and I have had this conversation, but it's something that needs to happen so that things can be put in place and updated. It's not something that you do one time and then 40 years go by and you never update it. Yeah. People move, people have new grandkids, people have new children. Sometimes people have new spouses. There's just a lot that goes into it that should be discussed openly. And I think it would be more beneficial if families had this discussion. It's great that we talk to our parents, but like my mom and her sister should have an idea of how stuff should go. Like it should be a community discussion that in a lot of other cultures, their businesses and things are a lot more integrated because that's the culture.
Yeah.
And so instead of having the great J line that Kanye said is like the crabs in a bucket. Well, crabs aren't supposed to be in a bucket. Right. So what do we expect them to do? So with us, we got to figure out a way that, hey, such and such was successful. That's fine. And I've been fortunate because specifically on my mom's side, who I'm a lot closer to, most everybody on my generation has done relatively well. Quite a few people make well over six figures. A number of people, a lot of them own their own houses. But for the most part, we're all siloed. And so if something was to happen to any of them, I would have absolutely no idea what their wishes are, what their wants are. And you would hope that maybe their parents, but in different instances, parents haven't had the best relationships with children. And so there's just so many potential pitfalls that get in the way that are important. And Pam was saying that she's been talking to her dad about estate planning and end of life matters, and her pastor's helping. I think that's another very important piece. Is
we have had most, because unfortunately we've been to quite a few funerals in the last year.
Yeah.
And I think one of my biggest takeaways is that I definitely want to have someone there who can speak to me as a person.
Right. And just for context, you're saying the pastor.
Like the pastor knows me. Or it's someone in my family or someone that we know who can do it, because it's just, for me, it takes away from the moment to sit there. Like, you're already super emotional. It's already a lot. But to sit there and then listen to someone speak about your deceased loved one And you can tell, like, they had
a lot of times they'll say, I didn't really know.
I didn't really know.
And it's like, dang. But to that point, different families have different groups of religions. Like my dad has certain religions that they follow, and my mom's side has other religions that they follow that are different from how I follow. But some people want to be buried a certain way.
Yeah.
And
but like you said, like, it's important to have those conversations. Like, with it, like, seeing things when they've happened in my own family over the last year, 3 years, with some of the deaths that have happened in my family, it's really driven home the point that I have to get things in order. And I'm one of those people, I don't want to have the conversation. Like, my mom has tried to have it with me a bunch of times, and I don't be trying to hear it, because that's just not a reality that you even really want to deal with when you get to that point. So having to deal with it preemptively and plan for it, like, I don't want to do any of that. But I've realized at the same time, I can't function that way, because there's too many details, there's too many things that can go wrong from not even understanding or knowing what the person who passes away, what they would want to do.
Yeah. I think that's important. And again, I've told you, put your big girl pants on, have the conversation, because if you, God forbid, you get to, especially how active both sides are.
Yeah.
Right? She's active. We're super active. We need to have that tightened up. But I think the other part to this is we talked about in family being able to have open conversations. And I think a big failure, and I think this is all families, so I'll generalize it, but being honest about who's in your family. And if you have, like, growing up, and we kind of talked about this a little bit on the parenting episode a long time ago, where I said, would you defend, the parent if they had like a drug addiction to the child? Because you don't want to, taint the view of the parent to the child, or if a dad was a Rolling Stone or a player, or mom was such and such, then you don't want to put that on or out to the family.
Right.
I get that. But the problem I've seen, and the stories that I've heard way too often, and I really, actually, I think this has happened in my family. I don't want to lie and say it hasn't, but children are a lot of times around a lot of people in the family. And there are times, and we watched Mayor of Easttown. We'll bring that up again. Great episode, a great show if you haven't seen it. But people be knowing stuff that certain people have done. And they keep it a secret. And what happens is later in life, family members, because it's a family and it's a village, sometimes kids are left with certain people.
And they shouldn't be left with those people.
And they should not be left with those people. You told me a story of sometimes you were left with someone and they would fall asleep because they were working, and it allowed you the freedom to get into some stuff. And that's a potentially smaller example in a different day and time. But
yeah, for sure.
In today's era, you can't have that. And so it would be great if people would just be open and honest and say, hey, I have a problem. You probably shouldn't leave said kid with me. But also that's an opportunity for them to handle their problem. And so I think the families need to do a better job, because when I grew up, there was a separation of the parents, the older group would go into a room, or kids would stay downstairs and the parents would be upstairs talking. But there was a miss here. And sometimes there needs to be a communication to say, hey, such and such is family. But if they do such and such, let me know. Or have that kind of conversation, because too many times I'm hearing way too many stories of kids being taken advantage of by family members.
And I think, again, like, I don't, obviously this isn't something that's isolated to the Black community, but you hear about it a lot. And it's like, well, if you know that this person shouldn't be around kids or shouldn't be around whomever, why is it so hush hush? Why do we like it? And it's not even, I don't even think it's necessarily protecting them, because at the beginning of the day, the person you should be protecting is the kid. But it's like, oh, whoever, uncle, whoever, don't put those shorts on when he comes over here. Nah, that's not a thing. Like, he just can't come over here.
Right.
And it should be okay for me to say that. Like, I'm not crucifying anybody for their problems, their addictions, or whatever. But I am allowed to protect my household.
Correct.
And if that offends you, then you need to figure out why me protecting my household offends you. There's this meme that I've seen online a billion times. It gets shared a lot, where a mom notices that her stepdad is bothering her daughter the same way he used to mess with her when she was a little kid. So this would be her daughter's grandfather, her stepdad.
Right.
And she was waiting for him to stop, or just to really see what the situation would unfold. And so finally she interrupts, and she's just like, to her daughter, is grandpa making you uncomfortable? And the daughter's like, yes, I am. And so she tells her to tell her granddad to stop. And the granddad's like, oh, I'm just playing. And, she doesn't have to be so sensitive. And the mom is like, no, if she says you're making her uncomfortable in her personal space, then you need to stop. And then her mom chimes in, and she's just like, oh, but it's not a big deal. And she turns to her mom. She's like, no, it is a big deal. If my daughter is uncomfortable with any behavior from anybody, it's supposed to stop. And that's what I'm teaching my kid, regardless of whether you taught it to me or not. And the fact that we still have to talk so heavily about how to protect our kids, not just from the outside world, because the outside world is ridiculous to begin with, but you have to protect your kids even from your family, and it's an issue. It's not, to me, that shouldn't be an issue. If you have people in your family, God bless their soul, and I hope they receive salvation from all the issues they might be dealing with. But if they have a problem, they have a problem. And if they can't be around your kids, they can't be around your kids.
Agreed. And Pam with some more knowledge for us. She said, I decided to share some of my life issues in my anthology projects. My sons learned some things I chose not to share when they were children, when I separated and divorced. And that's important. Having those conversations, it's not an easy conversation to have. None of these are easy topics to talk about.
No.
That's not fun to talk about. Child molestation and things like that. It's not fun to talk about, but I think I would say it's necessary. And you have to get over that awkwardness of how someone's going to feel, because it's bigger than the two of you, really. It's about longevity within the family and having a healthy relationship with those people in your family. And you said, we talked about it's not cultural. Like, I watched the Woody Allen documentary.
Right.
And
that's just insane.
To just see, I think of Farrow, I can't remember, Mia Farrow, her obliviousness to it. But there was a huge family, and everybody was like, yeah, this was awkward. Yeah, that was awkward. Yeah, it was weird, and this, that, and other. But they kept leaving
kids
or the one daughter, and I wish I knew her name and I could speak to it, around him.
But they're married now.
No, the different daughter.
Oh,
so
okay.
He married the daughter they had adopted, but there was another daughter that, when she was really small, at one point, there was a record of him going, or somebody walked in, and I think the housekeeper was like, his face was in her lap.
In her lap, yeah.
And it's like, that should be it.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any more questions.
Because it didn't stop there. Then he ended up in a room in an attic with her, and like more stuff went down, and that's just what came out in the documentary. But it's like that then led to him adopting another daughter who he married.
Right.
And then they ran away, and that and the other. So it isn't just a Black culture thing, but it does happen in our culture too, which is, for a long time, I think that was taboo in our culture. Like,
it was.
That
you
wasn't
weren't talk. You didn't
like
talk
Black
about
people
it.
don't do that. Like, Black people weren't necessarily gay for a long time, and then Black people didn't molest children. That's like white people stuff. And it's not. Like, those are things that, call it sickness, whatever you want to call it. R. Kelly showed that it's definitely prevalent here.
Super prevalent.
You can have Harvey Weinstein, you can have Jeffrey Epstein, you can have R. Kelly. Like, and I'm sure there's other religions and groups of people that fall in the Catholic Church. We've talked about that and family and the stuff that goes on and that doesn't get talked about. And we just got to do a better job. Like, we got to be honest with ourselves. We got to be honest with the people that we're family with and say, hey, you have an issue and you have to get that fixed. And until you get that fixed, there needs to be parameters and things put in place. I'm not saying ostracize people because that doesn't necessarily help them all the time, but you have to be cautious and diligent about who you allow in your house, who you allow around your immediate family, and then be vocal enough to empower your children and others to say, hey, if so, you see such and such doing something, let me know.
Let somebody know. Yeah.
And so, yeah, Pam said, my mom had 7 brothers, and I remember I didn't really stay overnight at my maternal grandparents' house. And I think there's a lot of people that have that. I've had my grandmother, I won't say which, or really both had a number of different men that they used to go around and lived in major cities, and we didn't stay there a lot.
Yeah.
We lived there, but my mom was very close at certain times. And I'd say that my grandmother was the issue, but there were just people that would come and go.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I've stayed with other different family members, like, you see certain things. And as you get older, you have a better idea of what was going on.
Yeah.
But who knows what could have happened in those situations that, fortunately for me, nothing really did turn out. But it can be just kind of crazy.
For sure.
So we got through the heavy stuff first. So let's lighten it up just a little bit. Let's have a little bit of fun. So this was my topic. I can't cook, so I'm not going to claim to cook. Actually, that's not true. I can cook.
No, he can't.
I can cook.
He can feed himself.
Don't like cooking. And so because I don't like cooking and the time that it takes and the dishes that it requires, I don't cook. But we talked about...
Fortunately, he married a woman who could.
I feel like all women should. That's just my opinion. Don't kill me for it. I just think that they should. And there was a great clip I watched about this the other night, but we're not going to go down that path. But in the transparency and honesty that happens in families,
Thanksgiving is coming up.
Thanksgiving is coming up.
Holiday time, parties, all that.
All of that. And you know, people like to make their dish. So what we have to do, people, is be honest with these men and women and let some of them know they need to sit out.
They cannot participate.
They cannot participate because what happens is their dish is the one that gets left almost full. And then they want everyone to take their dish home and don't nobody want to take it. So I think the idea, and I don't know if your family does this, but I think from my generation before me to my generation, I don't know if the recipes are getting passed down. Definitely not to the men that I understand. And if my family's in here, y'all can speak to it. Y'all can say that. But there's a potato salad recipe that exists in my family that I love. But there's only 2 people that can really cook it now that my grandmother has passed. And I'm nervous that because I don't know how to do it. And it's not written down anywhere, which is another issue with a lot of these recipes. It ain't written anywhere. It's going to get lost. And if I have to live life without potato salad at every Thanksgiving, and I would love to have it more often, then that's not going to work. But
I told you I would reach out to, I think you said your aunt knows how to make it.
Yeah.
That I would reach out to her and see if she can share. And actually, that's a little mental note for me to remember to actually reach out and ask for it.
But it's more than just reaching out because there's a, like, you gotta, my grandma used to stick her hands in it and it was different. And my mom and my aunt, they do all right, but too often times certain people be cooking stuff. And I'm the kind of person that is gonna ask,
who made this?
Who made it?
Yeah, for sure.
And I shouldn't have to ask that. You know what you made isn't good. So why are you making me be the bad guy and make it awkward by asking who made this?
So for me, like there are certain things that I just refuse to eat if certain people didn't make them. Like my mom makes dressing, period. I don't care who you are. Like other people in my family.
But you tried it when you went out. Whatchamacallit?
I did, and I was severely disappointed. Yeah. I was pissed. Like, but that's the thing. I set myself up because other people are like, oh, it's so good, it's so good. And so I'll try it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it don't be it. And then I get pissed off because it's not my mom's dressing. And if you've ever had my mom's dressing, you understand what I'm talking about. It's delicious, it's moist, it doesn't dry out after a couple of days. Like, it's just the pinnacle of dressing for me. And I refuse to just continually subject myself to other people's nasty dressing. Like, I just don't eat it anymore. Pam says you better learn to make that potato salad yourself, and that's what's gonna happen. Like, he's not gonna learn to make it. I'm gonna end up learning to make it.
Given my life history, it would
you probably should.
I would say it could be advantageous because God forbid you were to leave us and go to glory. And the precursors to you are also left to go to glory. I would be in a bad spot. So I might have
you should learn how to cook. I mean, I keep telling you, but
I told you I can cook, but certain things you can't just learn from Rachel Ray's cookbook, or what's that chick that used to use all the butter?
Oh, Paula Deen.
Paula Deen.
And that's funny because I was literally just having a conversation with her.
Paula Deen?
No, about her with someone the other day. Just because her recipes are really close or very similar to a lot of things that I would see like my mom doing, or other people who I grew up watching to cook. Auntie Annie and her husband Uncle Said, like, they could burn. Uncle Said still hands down has made the best barbecue I've ever had in my entire life, and there's never been any barbecue better than that. Like, and that's factual.
That's right, Pam. The hands-on tutorials, everything.
But like I said, Auntie Annie, Uncle Said, like, they could burn, and it was just, you could go over there and the food's out, and whatever you eating on from that table is gonna be good, like, period. But then there's other family members, I'm not gonna say names, but I do have other family members where I look and I'm like, I don't know who made that, and I'm not gonna subject myself. The other day when I was making the macaroni and cheese for Friendsgiving, it made me think of my cousin Rob, because when Rob finally learned how to make macaroni and cheese, he was so excited. And he would like volunteer, like, I'll make the macaroni and cheese. And like, he would come over to me and my mom, and he's like, I used this kind of cheese this time, and I did this and I did this. And he's like, I can't wait for y'all to taste it. And he would be so excited about it. I need people like that who are excited about their food and know that it's good to cook meals for me. Especially right now with the whole pregnancy thing, like, I can't do nasty food.
So you said something just now, and I've heard this, and I do subscribe to it, but I'll be curious to know if you subscribe to it. I was told that you can feel the attitude of the person cooking in the food.
Heck yeah. Because it's, like I said, like, my mom, I think the first time I made Thanksgiving dinner for us, my mom told me exactly what to do for like the greens and the dressing.
So you're angry? Is that what happened?
No. Oh. I wasn't angry. It just didn't have the same oomph to it as my mom said. And like, she came over, she ate it, she said it was good. But for me eating it, it was just like, there's something missing. Like, and I have no idea. Honestly, I followed the recipe. But it's like, you can tell when somebody put like, it's like, they say they put their foot in the food, but it's also like they put like, I don't know, like love, exactly, love into it, and it makes it taste completely different. And that's why, like, I don't make sweet potato pies. My mom makes sweet potato pies. Like, there are just certain things that, obviously, like, I'm a pretty good cook. Not to toot actually, I'm a really good cook. I'll toot my own horn just a little bit. I will, like I am. But
do you think? I ain't saying nothing.
But it's like, some people, like, they just don't have it, and they just need to recognize that they don't have it. And don't get mad when people tell you that whatever you thought was hidden ain't it, because nobody's got time to be sitting around the table picking at their plate because your food sucks.
Yeah. So that brings me to the next piece of this. is
my mom says she can learn to make it too.
cool.
So
It can be
somebody will know how to make this potato salad.
And also, I think it's important that we have a daughter and 2 sons.
Yeah, they're definitely going to learn how to cook.
They need to learn, one, so that if you die.
Why is it if I die? Like, what is happening?
That's the most positive way we wouldn't be together. So if you were to pass, I can now have an excuse to have them come over because I would need someone to cook this meal.
Yeah.
But I was going to go somewhere else, and now it's kind of. Oh, no. So the next thing, I believe, and this is just me, y'all don't have to agree with me, but I believe, if you so choose to make food, and you know your food isn't the best, I should not have to waste napkins or plastic plates covering my plate when I throw away your nasty food. If your food's nasty, I should be able to get up with my single plate because we have a global warming pandemic going on, and I'm trying to be responsible to the environment and save paper and plastic. I'm just throwing it away. I might fold it up a little bit so everybody doesn't know, but hey, you did this. I've given you the honor to let you know you don't know how to cook. If you insist on cooking, that means I can insist on throwing it away in the trash. Or I don't do this as much here, but we have children, and I can give it to the kids because their taste buds suck. They eat all kinds of nasty stuff from who knows where, and so that'll be your saving grace. But if they also don't like it,
Courtney will tell you. If she don't
no, yeah, she is. She would definitely.
Courtney's just like, if I don't like, Courtney won't eat it, and she don't.
That's the problem now. She got free lunch. She don't want to eat the free lunch, so she come home and eat all the paid food because the free lunch don't taste good. Gotta love children.
No, I agree with that though. Like,
it's not on me.
But to an extent, like I feel like people know when they can't cook. Like they be trying and they be doing different stuff, and it never really turns out. And you, as someone who can cook, like I know when there's something that I've done and I'm not quite sure about it, but I still want to serve it just to see how people feel about it. Like when you try a new recipe.
I was about to say that. I'm gonna let you finish, and I'm gonna respond to that.
When you try a new recipe, and it's a new recipe, so you haven't put your funk on it yet, so you don't really know. You just follow the instructions, and then afterwards, you're like, okay, I know how I would make this different next time, so that boom, it'll be better. But there are people whose entire cooking experience is like using a new recipe. They don't ever really know how the food is going to turn out. They've never really mastered how the food is going to turn out. So it's always just like a coin toss whether or not what they're serving is going to be good. But you know that your food is that way. So I don't even understand why you will feel a way when someone eats it and just like, I'm just going to throw this away and try something else. Like, it's okay. Like, you're trying, and that's really all that matters, because eventually you'll get better or, just master ordering out all the time. But don't be mad at people for not liking your nasty food.
So that brings me to a family gathering rule. If it's a family gathering, these are graduations, these are baby showers, these are repasses, these are Thanksgivings, wedding receptions, whatever it is. Family gatherings are not the time to try a new recipe. That's not when you figure out how you're going to cook something. You have friends and family, close family, they are your taste testers. You do not wait until someone requests a dish from you for a large group of people, and you come and you just try something new. Because you're going to look dumb. We're going to be mad because I'm going to be hungry. Especially if you told me it's coming. And, nobody says my food cooking sucks. Everyone says, my food good. So I hold you to that good standard, especially when I got family members that can cook good. And if yours is not good, as this conversation has said, I should be able to tell you that, and you should be able to take it with grace and understand it's not coming from a malicious place. It's coming from a place of love. And I don't want your feelings to get hurt going forward. So what I'm going to tell you to do is, in the future, practice that a little bit more on your own. Get some close people to try it before you bring it to everybody else. So that's my last piece on that. Yeah, I think we've covered the food topics. Hopefully everyone has a happy Thanksgiving. And for those of you that are cooking, please don't try a new dish. Do something you're good at. Stick to it. Keep it simple, stupid, and move on.
Keep it simple, stupid.
You never heard that?
Yeah, I have. I have.
All right. Yeah. So I was going to go a different direction, but we'll go here.
Well, what was the other direction you wanted to go in?
I was going to touch on the last one. But we kind of touched on it, but we didn't, but I don't want to go there. So
back to the heavy stuff, apparently.
And it can be. So it is, but it isn't. And I had this situation pop up recently with my family, and I've seen it pop up actually with a lot of families, sadly. A lot of my friends and family, the more I see is my social media is very black. Because a lot of the stories come from black people. So parenting. Parenting's tough. There's no book for it. There is no rhyme or reason of how to work. If you do this step, this step, this step, you will be a successful parent and your kids will grow up to be successful and they'll change the world. Doesn't exist. A lot of it is taught on the fly. A lot of it is not taught at all, which I think is part of a separate problem. But I'll use black culture because this is all I can speak to in my experience with black culture. And if I'm wrong, black people, talk to me. And if you're white and you've been around black people and you want to share, you can share too. But there's been the same way we talked about how in families there was the old group, the adults did the thing, whether it was the drinking, the smoking, the conversation, the part, whatever, and the kids were separate. A lot of that also is indicative of a lot of the parental relationships. And in my experience, I've seen do as I say, not as I do, which I think is very traumatic. It's very confusing, and it leads to a lot of contention and chaos. Also, I've seen do it because I said so, and don't ask questions, and that's just the way it is. And my concern with that, especially as I've gotten older and as I've seen it, is it creates a toxic relationship between a lot of times parents and children, and ultimately those children and their children, where people don't learn to have effective communication because I'm an adult and I told you to do it, so you need to do it.
Yeah.
And so children don't learn how to really have conversations on that level. Parents don't entertain conversations on that level. And so there's always this butting of heads that once a kid finally can articulate themselves, they articulate themselves.
Yeah.
And parents a lot of times are not prepared to hear that because for so long they could just verbally, in some cases physically, beat the kid down. And I don't think that, well, I know that that's not healthy. And like I said, I've seen it in specifically our culture for way too long, that we have to do better jobs in communicating with our children. And if we're upset with them, you can be upset with your children. That's perfectly fine. Kids can do the wrong thing. Kids will do the wrong things. Kids will try and change and do things on their own. And good night, Pam. Thank you so much. But that, to me, I think is a really big gap in our community, is how to effectively communicate with your children. And so with me, I've tried to be very good sometimes at over-explaining. And I ask questions, I already know the answer to them, but I still want to ask the question so that the child can begin to explain to me their thought process. Because in a number of cases, they aren't bad children. They just had the wrong thought process. And then as a parent, it's your job to figure out where that thought process came from. Did it come from the music that you play around your kids? Did it come from the people that you have around your kids? Did it come from the people's kids that you have around your kids, that your child felt that that was the right thing to do? And so just dismissing children as dumb and ignorant and stupid, and that's a whole different conversation, the way we talk to kids and the labels and words that we speak to our children. That's something that we got to do a better job of. And I believe this generation is doing a better job of being more communicative. In some cultures, they allow kids to talk a little too much to me. But I think in Black culture, we've been conditioned as children to just not say anything.
Children should be seen and not heard.
Children should be seen and not heard. And children don't belong in grown folks' business. But if a kid has a question, they should be able to come to you. And if you don't have the answer, say, I don't have the answer. Don't dismiss the kid or get angry at the kid because you ain't got the answer. That ain't the kid's fault. And so, yeah, that's just something I see that I would like to see us correct across the board, because I think it would allow for more cohesive unity if parents and children had a better form of communication.
I think that's 100% right. Not allowing your kid to express themselves, whether it be, emotionally or even just letting them talk. Like, we all know that, especially little kids talk about nothing, about everything, from the time they wake up in the morning until the time they go to bed at night. But somewhere in all of that nothing, they're expressing themselves and they're learning how to express themselves. And the problem, I think, even, in our generation, the problem became that you couldn't talk to your parents. You couldn't really openly communicate with your parents. So the first real understanding of how to communicate how you feel, how to communicate your emotions, and how to communicate your thought process, you're supposed to be able to do that with your parents. And then you can't. So you're left as a kid trying to figure out, how do I process the feelings that I'm having? How do I process the thoughts that I'm having? Like, they're so quick to diagnose everybody with depression and ADD and all these different things, when reality is kids just need to talk more. Like, there's a lot going on in this world. There's a lot of stuff that kids need to process differently. There's a lot of things that parents have to process differently. And just telling a kid to shut up, or, not wanting to deal with the kids, so sending them away so that you don't have to deal with them. It's like you said, it's just building like this whole wall of a kid not being able to communicate. And that it doesn't work, because these kids grow up and they make mistakes. And who do they talk to about their mistakes? How do they even process the mistakes that they've made, when sometimes they don't even realize that they're making them? I know for me, a big part of dysfunction or miscommunication when we first got together was, there were things that I didn't think I was necessarily doing wrong, but I was doing them wrong, and no one had ever really communicated with me that things, or my thought process, or the things that I was doing were wrong. And you were just like, so I don't know if you don't get it or why you don't get it, but this is an issue. And it takes a different level of maturity, even as an adult, to sit down and reflect on how you feel and how you're making someone else feel. So for a kid who doesn't even completely understand all the emotions that they're feeling, like, to get beat down verbally, and we don't even have to touch on physically because we know that that is an issue, to be continuously beat down verbally and spoken to in a negative way, or just any of those sorts of things, like, that's just setting them up to have so much emotional baggage as an adult. And toxic parents, like, they don't just affect that one kid. They affect that child, and then potentially their grandchildren. And unfortunately, if the cycle continues, another generation after that.
Yeah. So no, I definitely think, like you said, that communication is important. And it's not easy, especially when you feel like you're trying to assert your authority and maybe you feel disrespected. You feel like they're being taken advantage of, or you feel like it's just the child is just not doing what you want them to do. But that's part of the job. Like, it's your ultimately, a lot of it is your responsibility, and it obviously is a lot better in a 2-parent household versus a one, to kind of have that balance or even that break or rest. And we've definitely worked through that. And it's hard. Definitely not considering it easy, but I think it's important in family. Family's worth it. Family is important. A lot of times at the end of the day, family is all you have. I do also subscribe that family doesn't always share the same blood as you. There are some people that have done far more than me that don't share my blood than anybody that does. And I will always appreciate and love them for that. So yeah, that's really all I got. Hopefully you guys are entertained by the series. I know we talked about a variety of different things. If you are joining us for the first time, if it's your first time listening to us, definitely go back and listen to this series and a lot of the other things we're doing. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube. We're on Apple Music, we're on Spotify, Google Podcasts,
everywhere.
Pretty much everywhere.
You know, just put our names in, The Bottom Chronicles, and you can probably find us there.
Yeah. I had it on the bottom, but please go and follow us on social media. You know how the algorithm works. You want to algorithm the algorithm. So yeah, thank you so much. Hopefully this was an enjoyable time. I know we got into some heavier stuff going into the holiday season, but if you can't cook, don't be a taste tester. And
if you can't play spades, don't tell people that you can play spades and get on the spades table. Like, you know, it's awful.
I don't know where that came from.
Like I actually just had that experience. Like when we were in Indiana, I was playing spades with this lady and my cousin, and the lady, she sucked. Like,
and that's another thing. So we got to get out of that. People should be able to ask how to learn how to play dominoes, tonk, spades. There should be a space where people learn and they are taught how to play. Don't just castrate and blast people for sucking or not knowing how to play as an adult when you've never taken the time to help them. Let them learn, show them the way, take some emotion out. You're not going to die if you lose. I hate losing at spades.
I was going to say,
but I do it gracefully. The few times I lose gracefully. And I win gracefully. I don't talk too much trash.
That's not true. I've seen it.
She'll know what I'm talking about. But with that being said, in life, things happen. Really, you got to figure out what's best for you. You have the power to choose. Choose wisely. At the end of the day, always bet on you. And if we have been a blessing to you, go ahead and bless us. Run that Cash App up. It's in the comments. And again, thank you. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your Black Friday shopping. Be safe in these streets. And until next time, we will see y'all.
This one's for the culture. Me and wifey in the room thinking of a master plan, thinking how we can influence the culture from where we stand. Knowing that our steps are ordered by the master's hand, still 10 toes down, we ain't switching up the stance. The mission of this music ain't just to make them dance, trying to tell them